why is it I make these videos, for example? Why is it I've drafted an autobiography? Am I wanting to be remembered? Am I fearing being forgotten? Or is Hello, good morning. Welcome to my channel and welcome to the Alicante region of Spain. I hope you're well wherever you are. So as always, I thought I would just publish a short video to give you a few updates on what I've been up to during this first phase of my life here in Spain. So I've been here 8 weeks now, and yeah, things are moving slowly but steadily, and things are becoming clearer, and yeah, I guess I'm beginning to feel a little bit more settled here, becoming a little bit more used to the way you should live your life here and the sort of expectations you should have about how long things take. But yeah, I mean, I thought I'd reflect as well on change and what I've learned. And yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have a script. I haven't rehearsed this, so I'm not sure what's going to come out of this. Sometimes when I start to make these videos, I feel a tiny bit nervous because I think, well, what am I going to talk about? But we'll give it a go anyway. So as I say, I've been here for 8 weeks now, and we're still sorting lots of stuff out. I still don't have access to public health care, for example. My wife is still not a resident here, even though I am. And I was just thinking, actually, when we moved from the UK to Germany, I'm pretty sure that within about 1 week we had got all of the administrative stuff sorted out. And here I am in Spain, 8 weeks after arriving, and for my wife at least, we haven't even started the official process for getting her residency here. And of course, a lot of this is down to Brexit, or the after effects of Brexit. But some of it is to do with the way things are done here, and some of it is due to me trying to figure things out on my own as I go along a little bit. Whereas in Germany we had someone to take care of absolutely everything for us, because my company sponsored my relocation to Germany. But on this occasion we're here on our own. Anyway, after 6 or 7 weeks of stress and worry and paperwork and trying to get things moving, I decided it's about time we started actually living our lives. So we've done a few things that have been good fun, and we have more things in the pipeline. But maybe a couple of things that I'll reflect on is we've been to our first Spanish festival, and I'll show you some clips of that. And I've also been to my first book club here. So I'll talk about both of those things and reflect on what my key takeaways were. So first of all, with the festival, well, as you can see from some of these video clips, it was quite a remarkable few days. It was the San Juan, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, festival. So it's a big thing. It lasted several days here, and there was a public holiday last Wednesday as well. And the first thing that stood out for me was the difference between the culture here and the culture in Britain and in Germany, with everyone just relaxing on the beach, staying on the beach till the early hours of the morning, very family orientated, people having a lot of fun, felt very safe, and yeah, I just loved it really. We met up with a group of people there, Well, we actually had 2 days. So there was one day where we went into Alicante city, and there we were. Sorry, I'm not sure my way around here. In Alicante city, we went with a group of people. There was about 15 of us, and we went and watched the fireworks. We went and looked at all the different statues that were on display. I don't know whether they're called statues or effigies, I'm not sure. But they're made of wood and paper mache, and most of them, I think, get burnt at the end of the festival, and there's a big ceremony around all of that as well. Gosh, this is quite an amazing place, this is. Wow, not been here before. Oh look, I don't know whether you can see, but there's an archaeological site here. This is quite interesting. Yeah, so we went and watched all the festivities, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the carnival season in the Rhineland in Germany. In the last several days, thousands of people turn up. Yeah, it completely takes over people's lives during that period, and you get both the more modern kind of behaviours, you know, people out drinking and partying and so on, but you also get a lot of the traditional customs as well, you know, people in their old traditional costumes, and but it felt safe, it felt fun. I'd heard to be careful because of all the crowds, that, you know, pickpocketing can happen, but there were no issues for any of us, and yeah, we had a wonderful day. But then the other part of the festival happens on the beach, and that was on a different evening. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out whether I can walk across here. Looks a bit slippy, but let's give it a try. Ooh. This is fascinating. Yeah, so for that we also met up with a group of people, but it was a group of people we didn't yet know. So we were kind of on the fringes of all the activity, but I found it fascinating to just sit there and observe. I wasn't being very sociable, I wasn't mingling very much, but I was quite comfortable with that. I think in the past I would have had quite a bit of anxiety around that, you know, and felt awkward, but I wasn't. I just was really relaxed, just watching everyone else having a good time. They were all dancing and talking. Part of the reason I didn't join in was because I didn't know anyone, but the other part was the music was quite loud, so it was hard to make, you know, polite conversation without shouting at each other. But also, a lot of people were speaking in Spanish, and I don't yet speak a word of Spanish, so... But that didn't matter, you know, I was just enjoying it. Isn't this blooming beautiful here? Wow. I lived here 8 weeks and I didn't know this was here. Hold on. Can I get this turned around? I hope you can see how nice this is. I'll turn around quietly. Turn around slowly, not quietly, sorry. So yeah, so the whole festival was just wonderful, and even though I say I was being a bit unsociable, a couple of days later we met a couple who were there in the supermarket of all places, and we stood in the aisle chatting to them for about 15 minutes and really enjoyed it, and joined the group officially. So whilst we were talking in the supermarket, this lady added me to the Facebook group, and now I'm getting notifications of all sorts of events happening. There's a hiking group, they go off on little tours, there's language exchanges, there's all sorts of stuff that happens. And so I'm so pleased I went, you know, and we could easily have stayed at home and watched the England game, but we didn't, and making that effort paid off, I think. So yeah, that was good fun, and really enjoyed that. And I said at the start that it highlighted to me the difference in culture between Spain and Germany and Britain, but actually maybe that's not entirely true, because it did remind me, the evening on the beach reminded me a little bit of Rhein in Flamen, and that's an event that happens once a year in Germany. It was in Bonn where we lived, but it also happens in places like Cologne and Koblenz, and all the boats go in procession along the Rhine. They go one way in daytime, and then they come back at night, and then every village and town along the river lets off fireworks, and it all culminates in some huge fireworks display and party in Bonn around about 10 o'clock. And on the Rhine there are beaches, probably man-made beaches, but there are beaches, and lots of people if the weather's good. And that's the key difference, maybe. If the weather is good, then lots of people are there barbecuing and socialising into the early hours of the morning. So maybe there are some similarities. Maybe all these countries have their little festivals and carnivals and things. But I think because the weather is generally more predictable here, i.e. it's always sunny and it's always warm and it's always dry, then I think people can plan around that, and people expect it to be good. So they all bring their parties, they all bring their deck chairs, and they all celebrate late into the night. But anyway, where am I going with this? So the festival, my impression, or my basic understanding is it is about transition and change. And the reason I think that is because people write down on little pieces of paper what they want to banish, and they write down things they wish for, and they throw that into the fire. So yeah, and obviously change is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I wonder if there's somewhere I could sit here. Maybe there is. Hold on a minute, I'll just switch the video off, put the stand on, and then I'll talk. Let's try sitting down for a bit. Don't know how this is going to work, but we'll give it a go. Yeah, so festival, great. First introduction to life in Spain, and really enjoyed it and met lots of different people. Went with 2 different groups of people as well, so that was also nice. Then the other thing I've done is I went to a book club, and that was on Saturday night in Alicante, and it was set, or we met in a little art gallery, beautiful little place with paintings on display. Again, reminded me a little bit of the poetry evenings I used to have in Teignmouth with the Teignmouth writers, but instead this was a book club, and we all had a drink and sat around a table, and it was a really well run event. There were about 15 of us there from all different parts of the world. So we read a book called The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I really enjoyed reading this book. Because I was kind of late to the party, I joined this book club partway through the month. I didn't have long to read it, so I just jumped straight in there. I didn't read any of the blurb, any of the reviews. I didn't even know what genre it was. And it soon became apparent that this was a story based on Greek mythology. And I never studied Greek mythology at school. Don't know why that is. I've no idea. I don't know whether it was because of the curriculum, or because I skipped classes, or whether it was because I dropped history when I was about 12 or so. I'm not sure what the reason, but I am not very knowledgeable at all about this. And so this was my first little taste of Greek mythology. I think if I'd gone to that book club a few years ago, I would have really struggled, because it was clear some of the individuals were very well read, very intelligent, very knowledgeable, so they knew They had studied Greek philosophy and Greek mythology, some of them, either at school or later in life. And I think a few years ago I would have been intimidated by this, but I wasn't. I saw it as an opportunity to learn, to understand more about this subject and what lessons there are for our lives today, and certainly for my life today. And rather than being intimidated by it, I asked questions to help me to understand more about what was meant, or what the author might have meant by certain things within the story. One lady was saying how difficult she found it to read about how the women in this story were treated. And of course that also stood out to me. I care deeply about things like equal rights and fair treatment of people regardless of their gender or sexual orientation or ethnicity or religion. So it stood out to me that women were being really badly treated within this story. They were basically slaves to the men. But to hear a woman talking about that and how it really hurt her and troubled her, I found quite powerful. And she expressed it and articulated in a way that I could never have done. But what was also interesting was that one of the men that was there also said, well, actually, it was really difficult for the men in that age because they were sent to war, and the wars were horrific, and lots of people were killed and maimed and so on. And so it sparked this kind of debate about whether it was worse to be a man or a woman during this era, which I hadn't considered before, actually. So I loved the kind of intellectual debate there was around this, even though I often felt out of my depth in terms of my own knowledge and understanding of the story. But yeah, I came home feeling really motivated, really inspired, and I see it as part of my growth journey. I really want to become a better person and more confident, more articulate, wiser even, if that's possible. I hope that's not asking too much of myself, but I would like to gain more wisdom through my experiences in life. And I certainly saw this as one of those important experiences, and I was so glad I went along. And yeah, it also made me question things about my own life. So for example, Achilles started off as a really nice and likeable person, and towards the end of the story he became someone who frustrated me because he was stubborn, because his ego got in the way of his decision making, because he was more concerned about his reputation and his legacy and how he would be remembered, or even whether he would be remembered after his death, than he was about making decisions to protect and care for those close to him. And so I got rather frustrated with this, but then it made me reflect on my own life, partly because I know that in my life I have changed. I was a different person when I was younger to who I am today, and I have sometimes struggled with that. When I look back on the person I used to be, I sometimes have regrets and doubts and sometimes even shame. Not that I did anything horrific, but there were things that I did and thought back then that I wouldn't do or think now. But that's part of growing, isn't it? It's part of learning how to be human and how to live in this world full of complexities and so on. So I found it interesting to reflect on that kind of journey that Achilles had been on in the story and relating it to my own life, even though he went from someone I liked to someone I was less keen on. I hope, it would need others to confirm this, but I hope I've gone in a slightly different direction, in that I hope I've become someone I am more keen on, if you like. Although I have a lot of sympathy for the younger version of myself, because I was just trying to figure out a lot of things and trying to figure out my own way, and life is very daunting when you're young and very confusing, and I had no idea how to go about living my life when I was younger, whereas now I have much more experience to draw on, and I'm able to make better decisions, and I see the world differently. So I'm not unkind to the younger version of myself, but occasionally I have some regrets when I think about how I behaved. So it was interesting to see that journey that I've been on, and see the journey Achilles has been on, and sort of compare and contrast the two. And that was something I got from reading this book, but also from the discussion at the book club. And then this other thing about legacy, I think Achilles in the story feared being forgotten after his death. He wanted to be remembered as a hero, and as someone significant and important. And it questioned me. I was thinking, well, why is it I make these videos, for example? Why is it I've drafted an autobiography? Am I wanting to be remembered? Am I fearing being forgotten? And I haven't arrived at a conclusion on that, actually, but the question was an interesting question. And just for a split second I wondered, am I being vain? Am I seeking fame or something from doing all of this? Or is it something much more humble than that? And I think it is something much more humble. I think that I have an interest in my own life and my own development, because that is related to the human story, isn't it? That's my best way of understanding what it is to be human. So maybe I should take up philosophy or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, there we are. I've talked quite a lot in this video. But yeah, it was nice to do a couple of things that were nothing to do with paperwork. But unfortunately, I now must get back to the paperwork because there's a lot to do. But I also have my daughter's visiting me later this week. So I'm looking forward to showing her around this area. And normally when I do that kind of thing, I see the place that I'm living in from a different perspective. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope you're well wherever you are. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all your comments, and to those of you who like or subscribe, it's really appreciated. Take care of yourselves, and I'll make another video soon. Thank you then. Bye.